How's it going, sports fans? Hawkins here. On this video I'm gonna be talking about my 727 once again, but if you've been following my Instagram account, you've probably seen a couple of photos and a video about this project already, and especially what I've done with the receiver. First off, I'd like to give props and thank you to TJ Paxton on Instagram. He was the one who gave me the idea for this project, and he was the guy who gave me the original ideas on how to do it, and he told me how he made it, so I kind of like took it from there and did my own thing, basically, in the end. So on this video I'm going to talk you guys through it on how I did it. There's a lot of different options you can do, and it's not the only one, but this is the way I did it, and this is the way I got the results that I have here. So basically, Birchwood Casey aluminum black. That's the thing that you need to have, and that's the main component with which I made this. And I think the second time when I applied it to the receiver, the finish as it stands now is really, really, really good. At least I like it. It's not completely black. It has some kind of a, in some light it has kind of like a blue tone to it. I've heard this being called like cold bluing, but I don't know. It corrodes the aluminum, of course, but it's not the same thing, but it does look really, really cool. So the main reason I did this was to get the original GMP paint off, and it was quite worn already. And as Sergeant Anran said on my Instagram, that these things are, even though they're replicas, they're tools and they should look used, and I agree with that. But the finish of the original GMP paint is, or the color is not to my taste, so I wanted something a bit more black. And that's why I went with the aluminum black from Birchwood Casey. So the first thing you need to know or do before you start applying the Birchwood Casey into your receiver is to remove the old paint. I used soda blasting to remove the paint from mine, and it worked really, really well. It left the surface kind of like rough, and you can always get the same kind of, or almost the same kind of surface by sanding with sandpaper, but that takes a lot of time. And even though the soda blasting took me about an hour for the whole receiver, I think the outcome was a lot better than with sanding. I tried sanding as well on a couple of parts, or at least on one part of my receiver, and I didn't like the surface after sanding, so I used soda blasting for the whole receiver. After that, I cleaned the receiver to remove all the greases and scratches or like small dirt or something like that that might be on the receiver, so you don't get any surprises when you start applying the Birchwood Casey. After you've done that, took off the paint and cleaned the receiver, you can start applying the Birchwood Casey. First, I used a small paintbrush. Mistake, don't use it. Well, you can use it, but it's not gonna give an even surface, so I recommend using a polybrush. A polybrush is an excellent tool, I found out, for applying the Birchwood Casey. And when you're applying the Birchwood Casey, always pour it into a separate cup so you don't cross-contaminate. Don't use the original bottle, and if you're using a polybrush, you're going to have to pour it into a separate cup. You don't have to pour it all, just pour a little bit, and if you run out, you can just top it off. So after you've applied the first layer, let it sit for a while. Take your time and feel your way through it. I can't say an exact time how long you have to let it sit, but you'll notice it starts to bubble and there's some kind of hissing sounds and everything like that. That's one of the main reasons you have to take your replica apart, take your gearbox out, just in case you've been warned. So just feel your way through it and let it sit for a couple of minutes, or maybe not that long, maybe longer, I don't know, it depends on your receiver. So I let mine sit for about a minute, and after I noticed that the color was, it was okay, I took some cloth, which I dipped in cold water, and I wiped the receiver off. And this is to stop the process or the chemical process when the Birchwood glacis connects or comes in contact with aluminum. You will notice that it will start to darken quite fast. So the cloth which has been dipped in cold water stops that process, and it also cleans some of the excess liquid off from the receiver. And after that, I wiped the receiver with steel wool. I used 000 steel wool. TJ Paxton used 0000 steel wool, but you can use whatever works for you and whatever you have handy. The outcome depends on the roughness of the steel wool. So if you want to use the 000 or the 401, that's up to you. Just use your own preferences. Not all the replicas have to look the same anyway. So make your choice on that. And after you've done that, I wiped the receiver again with a dry cloth to remove any excess dirt or some other liquids or some like parts from the steel wool on the receiver. So you have some kind of a clean surface you can apply the Birchwood casing on. Now, on this round, it was the only round that I used steel wool, and I didn't use steel wool on the other times that I applied Birchwood cases. So I repeated the process, but the only thing I removed was the steel wool. So I didn't use that on the other layers that I applied to the replica. And the reason for this was that the first time I use it, there's always some part or some excess that will come off from the receiver, and I wanted to get that off from the first layer. On the second layers, I just cleaned it, and then I started applying the new layer. And when you have the color that you want, stop and clean the receiver, and then apply the WD-40 with a poly brush. Not the same poly brush that you applied the Birchwood casing with. Well, you can try. You'll find out why you don't use the same brush. And let that sit for about 30 minutes. I let mine sit for about 30 minutes. I went to get some coffee, and when I came back, the WD-40 had absorbed into the aluminum, so I just wiped the excess WD-40 off from the receiver and kind of like shined it, so to speak. There might still be some WD-40 on the receiver, but that will suck itself inside the aluminum in the end. And that's how I got this finish that I have here, and I have to say it looks really, really cool. And once this starts to wear off, after I don't know how long, but still, it's gonna look even more awesome. I also have a blog post up, which you can check out if you don't want to, if you rather read it, and I have a step-by-step guide there as well. So check that out as well. And I hope this video was useful for you. This is kind of like one of those short and sweet videos that I did before as well. So comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.